Welcome to That's So Us
with Ama
and Lo.
Join us every Friday as we talk about everything and anything.
From pop culture to mental health to life experiences.
Everyone needs a vent session, and we're ready to connect with you on so many levels.
Be ready to laugh and even cry. Grab some tissues and a drink.
And join us as we turn our 3 a.m. calls into this podcast. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have another guest with us and we have Mariana. So hi Mariana.
Hi ladies, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course.
Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Mariana, as you so graciously introduced me. I'm a somatic attachment coach for women, and I'm the founder of my practice Commitment to Growth. So a lot of people probably haven't heard the term somatic attachment coach. And what that essentially means is I apply the work of somatic body work to healing your attachment style. Essentially, a lot of people might have heard about the anxious, the avoidant subtype of insecure attachment, with secure attachment being the so-called gold standard. And so my work really focuses on bringing somatic healing into that, because I think that prop psych and like insta therapy have done a great job of giving us a really intellectual understanding of what the attachment styles are. Like, oh, if I'm anxious, I have these traits. If I'm avoidant, I have these traits, right? But it goes so much further into the body and the nervous system than we acknowledge. And that's why it's much deeper work than just, if you're anxious, spending more time alone. And if you're avoidant, opening yourself to vulnerability. There's a lot of steps to open our propensities for both. And so my work really is in helping women overcome those barriers to vulnerability, to intimacy, by starting with those barriers in themselves so that they can then manifest the love that they desire. So that's me and what I do.
That was a really great explanation.
Yeah.
My last
Thank
episode,
you.
I did a solo episode on here, and it was all about my health journey and like my experience with chronic pain, and like I've
Yeah.
really I dove so deep into somatic therapy and all that because genuinely from like trauma, your nervous system is like a state of shock and it goes into fight or flight, and I'm trying to like get my body out of that. So doing stuff like craniosacral therapy or myofascial release has been super interesting. But yeah, I don't know. What are your takes on those different types of therapies? Is that something that you do yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my work in somatics before I actually became certified as a coach, very similarly to you, came from a complex journey that I had with PTSD and traditional talk therapy, even like EMDR therapy, which for your audience or for you who might not know is emotional, it's like memory reprocessing therapy. And it wasn't working. And I was leaving the therapy room and still feeling like I was on guard from the world. I was having all these panic attacks, night terrors. And at one point, my therapist literally said, I don't know what to do with you. You should go see a psychiatrist. But having my background in substance abuse and psychiatric disorders outside of this work, I was like, I don't think I have a psychiatric illness or anything, because it was very sudden. I kind of unearthed this memory from 5 years ago that I just unknowingly suppressed and not really done the work to process. And so my hands were tied. I was like, I need other options because I don't really want to get on medication, and I don't think that this is anything other than my body's trying to communicate something to me that I just don't know how to listen to. And so I started moving, I started tapping into that through breath and art, and I saw the power in it. And eventually, when I understood that, like, oh, this is somatic work that I'm doing, then I went and got certified to do that. And a lot of people think that somatic healing, because we'll see these videos on Instagram of like people with like Palo Santo and like people doing these very like primal screams and like dances, right? But really, our ancestors knew about the power of movement as medicine. They knew the power of song as medicine. They knew the power of screaming as medicine. And so it's nothing new. It's just that it's not really accredited by Western medicine, at least because there actually is a lot of research behind it if you look into it, but it's just not in the mainstream really seen as like a form of healthcare. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
I feel like
Mm-hmm.
Western medicine is more so just like the pharmaceutical industry to kind of just cover things up, like
Yeah.
a quick fix, a little band-aid, instead of getting really deep to the root of it. And I've experienced so
Mm-hmm.
many doctors just tell me that it's all in my head or that it's all anxiety. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, even if it is, how sad is it that my anxiety is that bad to the point where I'm like experiencing
Mm-hmm.
physical symptoms? So, I mean, still to this day, it's been a struggle, but trying to work through it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm glad that you found somatics as a vehicle for that, because I think especially as women, our capacity to be so intuitive and like sensitive and deeply feeling is so turned on us, is like exactly like you said, oh, you're just driven by your emotions, oh, it's just all in your head. But really, the power in our sensitivity is that we have a direct linkage to our body trying to communicate with us, and it's just about learning how to listen to the story that it wants to express. So mhm.
Talking about like attachment styles and stuff, how can we like navigate different attachment styles, whether it be like in relationships and friendships? Like if you and your partner or you and your friend have different attachment styles.
Yeah. Would it be helpful if I went through the three first
Yes.
and then,
Yes.
yeah? Okay, perfect. I'll break it down really easily. So, for your viewers who might not know, in right now, as far as we know, there's kind of four different attachment styles. So, what an attachment style is how you feel connecting to a partner, a friend, family members. We have different attachment stances, I'll say, and I'll talk about why I say stance in a second. We have different stances towards different people based on how our past defined how safe we view connection, how trustful we feel in connection, how worthy we feel of ourselves, how safe we feel bonding to people is largely dependent on our childhood wounds, and that's typically what people associate attachment where people associate attachment is formed, but we can also of course experience adult attachment wounds. So the first I'll talk about is anxious, or ambivalent attachment is the other term used with it. So in anxious attachment, the core belief of people with this stance is I am too much and I have to fight to prove for my love, essentially. And so these with these people we see a nervous system that is extremely kind of towards fight or flight. So always super hypervigilant. If they sense any kind of emotional shift in the room, or as far as like sensing a different tone in someone's text message, these are the people who like really freak out when they sense change, because they interpret change as, oh my gosh, this person's going to leave me. I did something to mess this up. And so people with anxious attachment tend to be very clingy, very codependent, needing a lot of validation, needing physical closeness to assure them that that person isn't going anywhere, essentially. So that's anxious. That's very much the style I trend towards, in case anybody's wondering. The kind of other
Thank
side
you.
of anxious is I think a lot of women can relate to the anxious, and that's a whole other conversation. Then we see avoidant attachment. So if anxious, if we think about that like a super overactive nervous system, avoidant attachment is the other side of that. So people with avoidant attachment have a deep fear of being rejected, and they have a deep fear of emotional closeness, and their coping mechanism to that was to numb their emotions in childhood. So they might have had like a really overwhelming parent, or a parent who just wasn't responsive to their emotions. And so their response was, okay, I'm just going to dim it all so that I'm not too much for this person. And avoidants get a really bad rep because these are like the ghosters, the super hyper independent people, um, people who struggle a lot with sitting with other people's emotions. They might be people who, like, in really extreme cases, gaslight, or they run away when things get emotionally heavy because it triggers the emotions that they froze at one point in time. And it's really tough because if you speak to people with this attachment stance, they'll tell you that they might see somebody expressing emotion and they want to connect more deeply, but their nervous system is still in such a frozen state that they don't know how to crack open. Because also, if it's like, if you imagine like completely melting the ice off of something that's been frozen for so long, it would be really dysregulating if you just expose that thing to the light. And the same is true for those suppressed emotions. So that's avoidance. In much more complex scenarios, we see disorganized attachment. And so this is a very common stance in people with very long and horrible stories of trauma in childhood. And with disorganized, the way that you can think about it is they might be the extreme end of either avoidant or anxious. So in disorganized anxious, we see people who are very codependent, cannot have any physical distance, pick people who might experience, like, if you leave me, I'm going to die, like that level of dysregulation. With people who are disorganized avoidant, we might see like a super suppressed threat response because their nervous system is so frozen that they like can walk through really dangerous streets and they don't sense threat, or they're just completely avoidant of social interaction altogether, emotionless, things like that. So it's a much more complicated scenario. And then the gold standard that I think we all try to achieve at some point is secure attachment, right? And so if your viewers take nothing else away from this conversation, it's that secure attachment does not mean that you stop experiencing anxious or avoidance ever again. It's simply the capacity to experience those states and return to connection, knowing that your past stories are not dictative of what's happening in the present. That's all secure attachment is. And isn't this perfectly healed person? It isn't this like, if you're not in secure attachment all the time, you're broken or your relationship is broken. It's just getting to a place where you can co-regulate with your partner. You're not so responsive to your past narratives. You feel safe accepting and giving love, things like that. And so the last thing I'll say on this is you heard me say stance instead of style. And the reason why there's a shift towards saying stance over style now is because all of us experience both or all of the attachment styles with different people in different situations. One situation might trigger a more anxious uh, disposition, but then we'll enter like a friendship or something traumatic happens in conflict and suddenly we're avoidant, or vice versa. And so it's really important to not label ourselves with like an attachment style like it's a diagnosis, because suddenly if you experience another response or another attachment stance, you're going to be like, oh, maybe I'm disorganized or maybe I'm avoidant. But it's just understanding that it's very context dependent. Does that all make sense so far?
Oh,
Yeah.
I was actually
Great.
going to, that was one of my questions, and our viewers also had that question, if you can oscillate between attachment styles. Because, like, with my
Yeah.
friends, for example, or my family, I'm very avoidant. But then in, like,
Mm-hmm.
situationships, I'm, like, more anxious, which is just, like,
Mm-hmm.
weird to me. I'm that way.
Yeah, yeah. It's extremely normal to oscillate between the two, and it's simply dependent on what wounding is coming up and how those people are triggering but also soothing or not soothing those wounds. So totally normal to oscillate. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's so many things to ask. I'm like, I don't even know where
I
to
know we have,
start.
like, a long
But
That's
when
okay.
we're talking, yeah,
It's
when we're
like,
talking about like our nervous system and stuff,
mm-hmm.
how do we kind of like how can we rewire it and like kind of heal it in different ways other than using like medicine? Would you like suggest?
Oh, I love this question because this is a shift that I've been taking a lot in my work and in the messaging that I'm sharing. So there's two things I'll say to that. The first being that I think the word rewiring is extremely misunderstood because people simply see rewiring or they hear rewiring and they think, okay, going from anxious to like baseline peace, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you can be extremely traumatized and have all these insecurities and do all the breath work you want. And in 10 minutes, it might get you to a semi regulated state where you're like, okay, my heart rate's lower. I'm feeling a bit more chill. That's fine. But then when you walk out into the world, you're right back to where you started because rewiring your nervous system is not just doing so much breath work that it stays like baseline. Rewiring your nervous system is about releasing everything that is dysregulating it in the first place. And what I mean by that, and the second thing I'll say to that, is that um, when people think rewiring your nervous system, they're thinking about anxiety typically, right? Or avoidance, whatever their mechanism that they want to heal is. But anxiety and avoidance are only symptoms of something deeper. And what I've been sharing with my community is that, especially when we're talking about attachment styles, we're talking about one layer deeper to the anxiety and the avoidance, which is we're healing shame. Shame is the root of all anxiety. And you could apply that to any situation in your life. You're anxious about giving a presentation at work, it's probably because you were told as a kid that you're a bad presenter, as an example, right? And so you're trying to mitigate the shame from that. If you're afraid of being vulnerable with your partner or your friend, it's because you're afraid of the shame you might feel when they see your messiness and your imperfection, right? And so when we're talking about rewiring our nervous system, it's not just about through breath and through eating healthy foods and through cold plunges, right? To like lower the heart rate and things like that. We're talking about what stories are you holding on to that are keeping you hypervigilant all day long. They're keeping you from being intimate with your loved ones. They're keeping you from feeling safe enough to be your authentic self. And the next step to that is, can we release those narratives and create new ones that help you feel safe as who you are, knowing that you might be ridiculed for it, you might be shamed for it, you might be rejected for it, but you have enough self trust to step out into the world as this version of yourself, knowing that you've got you and that there's nothing more liberating than being authentically you and instead of suppressing who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, how do you
Yeah.
then know? Like, I guess there's no like final way of like knowing you like reset your nervous system or whatever. But like I've tried so many things and I still feel like I'm kind of stuck, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like you can
Yeah.
only try so much, but I don't know how to like get to that place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a lifelong journey because I
Yeah.
think the other side of that is, and this is where somatics is really misunderstood. Like people think somatics and they think, oh, just feel your feelings, right? And like think about the place where you're holding tension and releasing it, right? But at a more, I don't want to say clinical approach because I don't work clinically, but like at a more scientific level, I guess I'll say, um, when we're talking about somatics, we're looking at the way that your body and brain literally reorganized themselves to the world around you based on what happened to you. So, for example, what a lot of people don't know is that when you experience really life altering trauma, your body's perception of boundaries completely dissolves. Like when you experience trauma where you felt violated or crossed, you have no, like, if you close your eyes and you think about yourself as a sovereign and separate entity from the world around you, you'll find that there's like an enmeshment in some way. You're like, oh, there isn't really like a concrete wall there. In some cases, people are like, oh, there is a brick wall as thick as China, right? Um, but in a lot of cases, there isn't that perception anymore. And so through somatics, we like try to rebuild that conception again. We try to separate you from the world so that there isn't that much people pleasing, there isn't codependence and things like that. And so it goes beyond feeling your feelings and about completely like restructuring your body and your perception of life.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Also, with what you were talking about, like your last point, um, personally, I feel like I've gotten over like the fear of people like judging me, but like you said, it's more than that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the shame behind that. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely stuff to think about.
Yeah, it's a lot of releasing, but also like adopting trust in yourself, right? And creating capacity for that self trust and that self love. It goes beyond, like I said, feeling and releasing your feelings. It's like a complete self rediscovery and self reclamation journey is what I really see somatic healing as.
I know that because of trauma, well, your body stores trauma and it can result in like a lot of chronic pain or illnesses. Is there any way to
Yeah.
then, through healing, like reverse that?
I don't know if I can go as far as say reversal, although I have seen examples of that. When we're talking about somatic manifestations of trauma, like a lot of people with sexual trauma will have tight hips, for example, because like their sacral chakra is very protected and there's a lot of fear in that area. When we see people with like chronic stress, we'll see things like obviously like mouth grinding at night and like tense neck and things like that. So I would say that it is a process of, like I mentioned before, paying attention to what stories are perpetuating themselves in your mind. Like, how are you holding your body when you are working and pressuring yourself to work? When you are having a vulnerable conversation with your partner, what's your body language like? Are you open to them and are you looking them in the eyes, or are you looking away from them? And like maybe you're like doing stuff with your hands, for example. Your body's always telling you a story, and it really is keeping the score through your muscles and your body orientation and things like that. So actually, on it's great that we're having this conversation now because 2 days ago I held a somatic stress relief workshop here in Vancouver, where I'm from, and I had a woman with a broken spine come to this workshop. And it was like I saw her come in and I was so enamored because the premise of the workshop was movement. And she comes in with a walker and she's so like engaged and so willing, even though she had to leave a bunch of times to handle her pain because she was in so much of it. But she moved what she could, right? Like because we were doing kind of like dancing and I got them to move around the room and things like that. And she sent me a review the next day saying that she had gone home and she was extremely tired because she'd done all this energetic release, and then she woke up the next morning with no pain, which she hadn't experienced in months. And not only was that ecstatic for me, and it didn't reverse the injury, of course, but it does go to show that with energetic and belief releasing, your body is able to relax into safety, which dispels things like pain and tightness, because those are, in essence, like your body protecting itself in some way. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess so then,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm like processing. So
That's
I
okay.
guess the thing that we want to conquer is just feeling safe. Is like our brain feeling safe so then our body can feel safe? Am I right in that?
Mm. Oh, that's such a good question. Your brain feels safe so your body can feel safe.
Or is it vice versa?
I think it's yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. I think it's both happening at once. because your your body feels unsafe because either what's going on in your mind, and what's going on in your mind is causing certain symptoms in the body, right? So
Right.
um like you might be telling yourself that you are unworthy or that you're stupid or whatever, and so then your body feels like a super dysregulated place to be. But at the same time, say you do some breath work or some like 360 gazing, like we do a lot in somatic work, and your body starts to feel like more at peace. You feel like, oh, my heart rate's coming down, my breath is getting slower. If your body eases, your mind is more likely to kind of slowly silence itself. And so it's
Mm,
very much, what's the word? Like a bidirectional process, I would say. But
yeah.
you need both. You need to feel safe in your body to feel safe in your thoughts, and vice versa.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. That makes sense.
A lot of people will look at like somatic healing and somatic therapy and somatic work and everything and be like, oh, like that's kind of like spiritual type of work, or like
Hmm.
they don't believe that it's true and like they don't believe that it can work. What do you kind of tell people who may be kind of unsure about it?
Oh, 100%. I would I would tell them that it's what our ancestors were doing before pharmaceuticals were invented. And it's how people increase their lifespan over the years. I would tell them that it's the reason why things like dance and song exist before they became commercialized, right?
Mhm.
And I would tell them that there is nothing more potent than the medicine of your body, because your body knows, our bodies know how to heal themselves. That's the truth, right? um the reason why you feel antsy when you're anxious, or you feel like getting up and jumping or going for a walk, is because that's literally your body telling you, like, if we move, we're dispelling energy, right? The reason why when we're sad or we're feeling depressed, you want to curl up in bed and not leave the house, is because that's your body repeating that narrative by encapsulating itself and going inward, right? It's a time of deep reflection for a lot of us. And so your body is actually, it's speaking to you all the time. It's just that we haven't been taught how to look at body language as a story and as insight into, okay, what is it trying to tell me, right? And so if anybody was apprehensive, I would tell them, like, just one of these days when you're stressed, like, get up and pretend that you're like shaking the stress off, like literally just start shaking your body and imagine that the stress is melting off as you do, and you will notice a difference, right? And it goes beyond like, oh, when you jump your heart rate goes up and the happy hormones kick in, right? That stuff kicks in because you're dispelling and replacing energy, and movement is doing that. And I think, like, there's no greater evidence than that. We've just been taught to value, evidence based pills over the
Yeah.
medicine of our own body. Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Actually, I've
Yeah.
gone into researching about muscle testing. I don't know if you know a lot about that, but
Oh, I
for
do.
those who
Yeah.
don't know, well, actually, you can explain it then for those who don't know.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not certified in muscle testing or myofascial release, but I got my degree in kinesiology actually before I went into somatics. And so with muscle testing, what we're looking at is how is that energy of stress, tension, anger, rage, betrayal, whatever it is for you, is how is that being stored in your muscles, right? Because what happens is, as I mentioned earlier, when something traumatic happens to us, our brain completely reorganizes our orientation of our cells relative to the world, right? And one of the things that it does is it kind of like, it shoves away the most ashamed parts of us, and it like builds these layers over them, right? Like, we might be the super hyper independent woman, but it's because deep down we're so ashamed of being seen as like weak or incapable, and so we don't want to ask for help, right? So that's one way. Yeah, I see you both shaking your head. I totally resonate with that. And I'm sure your viewers will also be like, oh, that's so me as well. Now, what happens is that's what happens in the brain and to your identity, right? You're like, oh, I'm the super hyper independent girl, and I don't need help from anybody really. But that also manifests in your body, right? And so in some muscle testing paradigms, they'll tell you that shame and rage are stored in different parts of the body, like the hips or the abdomen or the shoulders or the yoni, whatever that is. But at a more simple level, what physical muscle work is doing is it's releasing the muscles that have constricted to protect that shame, that fear, that that anger, right? Because when we relax, we dispel that energy. And so a lot of us are walking around with tension in those parts of our body. And what muscle testing is really doing is just allowing for physical release to occur so that the energetic release can then occur. Like bare bones, that's about as simple as I can explain it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
Mm-hmm.
a great explanation actually. So then if people want to go see someone for that, who like what do I look up? Is it like a kinesiologist?
Yeah. Well, kinesiologists, like traditional kinesiologists, are trained in muscle testing for injury rehab. So, unless
Okay.
they have a great background in energy healing, they probably aren't trained in how to do that. I definitely wasn't taught that in school. You would want to look up a myofascial release practitioner or a spinal energetics practitioner, are two that come to mind for me. Um, if you're looking for something more spiritual, you might look at people who specialize in Kundalini dance or Kundalini awakening, because Kundalini dance really works with like um, the sacral chakra, so like loosening the muscles in like in our like sexual organs and things like that, especially for women who have sexual trauma. And so that's another modality that I would recommend. But those are the three that come to mind so far. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Actually, speaking about sexual trauma, we do have a listener who um, asks, well, okay, just to summarize, they say that they feel like something happened to them when they were younger, but they don't necessarily know
Mm-hmm.
because they can't remember. So, to that person or those people, what would you say to something like that? How can they, I guess, work through like learning actually what happened to them?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for asking that question. And I mean, the first thing I would say is I'm so sorry to that person. Uh, and when I speak about I entered the work of somatics because my PTSD also stemmed from an experience I had of that nature when I was 19. And so I can tell you from my experience what that healing has been like for me. And I think the first thing that a victim of something like that or a survivor of that has to really sit with is the the tendency to self-blame and the tendency to be in denial about something like that. And it's something so gravity toppling for the brain to understand that it's really easy to shift into denial and like there's no way this happened to me. And I know like before I started sharing my story, I had months of grappling with like is my story even that serious or like significant, because like I'm doing a lot better now, so maybe I wasn't traumatized enough, right? Like you will try every which way to diminish your experience. And the other reason why that happens is because your brain knows that what's on the other side is a very tumultuous healing process of anger, rage, pain, betrayal, possibly flashbacks for people like myself or anybody who went through something really traumatic of that nature. And so my first piece of advice would be like absolutely do not do it alone, because I made that mistake and it led to some very scary times in my life. So my first question would be like, or my first point would be, find somebody who's trained to help you work through that work, and specifically that work through a modality that helps you slowly ease into it. So I would caution anybody from going into like very deep body work right away, like finding a practitioner who's willing to take you through that slowly. Um, and then once you're at a point where you can either speak about it safely enough, or you're feeling more comfortable with accepting the reality of that event, then bringing in body work, then bringing in that somatic piece, because your body is storing that trauma, and it has to feel safe enough to release it, you have to let the body speak to you from the places where it's storing it. And so don't do it alone, find somebody who can take you through that journey. If you're having doubts about like, oh, did this happen to me, lean into that, and like, why do you have that presumption, right? Is there physical manifestations of that you're seeing in your body? Like maybe physical intimacy is really terrifying to you, or something that I definitely experienced was this like horrific avoidance of men for a while. Like I could not walk onto the street without feeling terrified of men, because my brain was trying to shield me from that experience, right? So just paying attention to what you're carrying day to day and how that might be giving you clues. And the last thing, once you've found and gotten that foundation, is have an incredibly supportive group of people around you who you feel safe to lean on, especially people who you know are going to be there unconditionally, because it's a very messy journey, and it's a journey of a lot of taking two steps back before taking another step forward. It's not linear. You're going to go so up and down so many times and have so much self forgiveness. Like, I can't stress that enough, because you will be so tempted to blame yourself. You'll be so tempted to turn it back on yourself. And no matter what happened, your body did what it needed to do to help you survive. And you did what you could with what you had. And so just forgiveness and acceptance, and accepting the journey as a whole, I would say, because the more we resist it, especially if you have PTSD, the more friction you're going to experience as you go about that healing. So thank you for asking that. I literally have not said that on a podcast yet, and to be able to give somebody what I wish I'd known during my journey is so special. So thank you. And to anybody listening, I'm so sorry if that does resonate with you. Yeah.
So since our podcast is called That's So Us, this is like a fun little one.
Okay.
If someone like your close friends or family or whatever saw something or anything, what would they say is like that's so Mariana?
Oh, flowers. Flowers.
Yeah, what type of flowers?
Oh, sunflowers. I literally, my boyfriend got me this like glow like sunflower lamp literally sitting on my desk here. I wear flowers all the time. The premise of my brand Commitment to Growth is flowers, because I was in a field of flowers when I came up with the name, because flowers commit to growth, like flowers between cement blocks and things like that. So flowers, sunflowers, lilies, roses, especially. Yeah, that's me. That's so me.
I love
Yeah.
it.
I love that.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Well,
Thank
thank you.
you.
And also, where can everyone find you?
So, to find me, I'm mainly on Instagram. It's Commitment to Growth. I post all my insights there, somatic stress releases if you're looking for a little tidbit to add some release to your day. Um, I'm on TikTok as well, Commitment to Growth. And if your listeners are looking for like a little push in their somatic healing journey, I'm about to launch my new online sisterhood called Belong. So it's going to be a space for women who are really dedicated to their healing and really want the frameworks that we kind of chatted about in today's session, about reorienting yourself, regulating your nervous system, getting past that shame. So it's going to be 2 somatic healing sessions per month together, live Q&A, access to the community forum to connect with the girls, and a lot more. And for the women who sign up now before September 10th, depending on when this episode is dropping, I'm giving them a founding member discount of 50% for life. So I can definitely send you the link to post on the episode description if they're interested. But that's me and what I'm up to most of the time. So yeah.
I love that.
Awesome. Thank you
Yay.
so much.